He didn't just bribe the Miami police, he owned them. While federal agents searched his trucks, they found no drugs. Only tigers, crocodiles, and snakes. When a federal informant threatened to expose him, the man vanished, cut into pieces with a chainsaw, and burned until nothing remained. And here's the part no movie tells you. The person who ordered that execution is still free today, posting on Instagram, giving zoo tours, and shaking hands with tourists. His name is Mario Tabraue. Hollywood turned him into Tony Montana. But unlike Scarface, Mario didn't pay for his crimes. He won. Thanks for clicking on this video. We're just a group of friends with regular 9-to-5s, but these stories haunt us enough to spend our nights bringing them to you. We don't ask for much, just your subscription, a like, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Thank you for believing in what we're doing. Every single one of you makes this possible. Miami, 1979 wasn't just alive and bubbly. It was drowning in white powder and blood money. While America struggled with gas lines and inflation, one corner of Florida was building empires on drugs. And the man at the center of it all wasn't some Hollywood invention. He was real, and his name was Mario Tabraue. Picture a young Cuban American in his 20s, gold chains sparkling in the Miami sun, driving a bulletproof Mercedes through Coconut Grove. He didn't look like a monster, but behind his handsome face was something far more calculated than the average street dealer. Mario wasn't selling dime bags on corners. He was running what federal prosecutors would later call an enterprise worth $79 million. Most drug dealers operated in the shadows, but Mario moved differently. He owned a business called Zoological Imports Unlimited, and it was the perfect cover. Customs agents would search his trucks expecting contraband, yet they'd find leopards, cobras, monkeys, and tigers instead. The drugs were there too, hidden in places no one wanted to look. Former employees later testified that Mario would cut open snakes, stuff them with coke, then stitch them back up without caring whether the animals survived. The exotic animals served another purpose beyond smuggling. Mario kept predators at his mansion, not in cages, but walking freely on leashes through his property. Imagine witnessing a meeting at his estate while a leopard stalked past your chair. Who testifies against a man who feeds witnesses to his pets? The intimidation was psychological warfare. Yet intimidation alone doesn't build an empire worth tens of millions. Mario understood something most criminals missed, which was that corruption wasn't about bribing cops. It was about owning them. Federal court records later confirmed that uniformed Miami police officers, on duty, actively helped Mario unload drug shipments. They didn't just look the other way, and they didn't just take bribes. They counted his money, dispersed his profits, and protected his operations like employees on a payroll. Think about that for a moment. You call 911 because something looks suspicious, and the officer who responds is loading coke into his squad car. Mario Tabraue had systematically purchased pieces of the justice system itself. He reportedly paid $150,000 to the Key West deputy police chief and various Monroe County officers in 1978 alone. The city wasn't just corrupt, it was rotting from the inside. Mario's father, Guillermo, ran a jewelry store in Little Havana. Both locations, the pet shop and the jewelry store, became fronts where wholesale drug deals happened in broad daylight. Between 1978 and 1986, the father-son operation smuggled 500,000 pounds of marijuana and 95 kilograms of coke through Louisiana and Florida. The scale was staggering, yet they operated with near impunity. At the height of his power, Mario allegedly stored 10,000 pounds of marijuana inside Parrot Jungle, a Miami tourist attraction. Families brought their children to see exotic birds while bales of drugs sat hidden nearby. The audacity wasn't recklessness, it was strategy. Hide in plain sight where no one thinks to look. But every empire has cracks, and Mario's appeared in July 1980 when paranoia turned to violence. A man named Larry Nash made a fatal error. Nash was an informant for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, tasked with infiltrating Mario's operation. He believed he was clever, yet Mario's intelligence network was better than the federal government's. Word reached Mario that Nash was cooperating with authorities. What happened next would become the foundation for one of cinema's most notorious scenes. Larry Nash disappeared on July 15, 1980. His family waited for him to come home, yet he never did. By August or September of 1980, the family learned Larry was missing. His mother hired a private detective, but in January 1981, someone claiming to be an insurance investigator called with a chilling warning. They gave her family members names, addresses, and phone numbers, then told her to pull the private investigator off the case. The message was clear: if you guys keep digging, more people will die. The truth about Larry's death didn't emerge until years later during trial testimony. Witnesses described how members of Mario's organization realized Nash was an informant. They shot him, yet that was just the beginning. The order came down. Nothing of him could remain. No body, no evidence, no trial. The execution site was a secluded location. Trial testimony revealed that Mario's associates first tried using machetes and axes to dismember the body. But human bone is tougher than most people realize. The work was taking too long, so someone suggested a circular saw. When that proved inadequate, they brought a chainsaw. Witnesses testified that the dismemberment happened while Mario either watched or gave instructions. Accounts varied on his exact level of participation. After the body was cut into pieces, they placed the remains in a horse trough. They burned everything using charcoal and lighter fluid, attempting to destroy all DNA evidence. Larry Nash, a federal agent trying to do his job, was reduced to ashes and scattered bone fragments. His 10-year-old son learned about his father's fate when his mother walked into his room on his birthday carrying an envelope. Inside was a newspaper headline: "Missing informant, feared dead." The Nash family never received closure, never got a proper burial, and never heard an apology. Decades later, when Netflix's Tiger King documentary casually mentioned Larry's murder while Mario Tabraue discussed his past, Larry's son watched in horror. No one from the production had contacted the family, asked permission, or even warned them their father's brutal death would be entertainment content. They learned details about the chainsaw, the burning, and the disposal by watching television alongside millions of strangers. The chainsaw murder wasn't the only death linked to Mario. In 1981, his first wife Maria died under suspicious circumstances. The couple was divorcing, and according to the Miami Herald, Maria had threatened to expose Mario's drug empire to federal authorities. Shortly after making those threats, she was shot 10 times. Mario was charged with ordering her execution, yet his lawyer, Richard Sharpstein, successfully defended him. The jury couldn't reach a unanimous decision, and Mario was acquitted. The Miami Herald reported that Mario winked and smiled at his second wife, Diosty, when the not guilty verdict was read. 2 people dead, both conveniently silenced before they could testify, yet Mario remained untouchable. The first major attempt to arrest him came in 1981 through Operation Giraffe. Federal agents raided his Coconut Grove mansion and discovered 6 tons of marijuana. The case seemed airtight, but Mario's legal team successfully argued that hundreds of hours of wiretap evidence were improperly obtained. The case was thrown out. Mario walked free. For 6 more years, Mario operated with impunity. He became so confident that former associates recall him answering his phone saying, "Mario's drugstore, specializing in marijuana, coke, and quaaludes. Anybody interested, come and get it, including you, Metro-Dade Organized Crime Bureau." He was taunting law enforcement because he knew he owned enough cops to stay protected. The House of Cards finally collapsed in late 1987. The federal government launched Operation Cobra, named specifically for Mario's exotic snake collection. On December 16, 1987, federal agents executed coordinated raids. Helicopters circled above, SWAT teams stormed properties, and the FBI descended on Mario's compound. As agents arrested his associates, one panicked accomplice threw a bag containing $50,000 in cash out of a window. A federal agent caught it mid-air. The arrest swept up 7 people, including Mario's father, Guillermo, and Orlando Cecilia, who happened to be married to the sister of future U.S. Senator Marco Rubio. The operation dismantled what prosecutors described as one of South Florida's most prolific and violent drug gangs. The main indictment charged Mario with racketeering, operating a continuing criminal enterprise, conspiracy, murder, and corruption of public officials. If convicted on all counts, he would face 205 years plus life imprisonment and $3 million in fines. The trial began in 1989 and became a media spectacle. Prosecutors presented evidence of a decade-long criminal operation. They documented the bribes paid to police, the murder of Larry Nash, the allegations surrounding Maria's death, and the systematic corruption of Miami's law enforcement. They painted Mario as the chairman of the board of a $75 to $79 million drug trafficking empire. Defense attorneys argued that Mario was being scapegoated, that others committed the violence while Mario simply ran a legitimate exotic animal business. The jury didn't buy it. On 61 counts of racketeering, they found Mario guilty. The judge sentenced him to 100 years in federal prison. At age 33, Mario faced dying behind bars. Most people would consider that was the end. Justice served, case closed. Yet Mario Tabraue wasn't most people. While locked up, he demonstrated the same strategic thinking that built his empire. He cooperated with authorities, became an informant, and provided information about other criminals. The details of what he revealed remained sealed, yet it was significant enough that federal prosecutors recommended reducing his sentence. This is where the story gets uncomfortable. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment if you think informants who commit murder should ever walk free. Your engagement helps us keep covering stories others won't touch. Appeals and cooperation led to an unthinkable outcome. In the early 2000s, Mario Tabraue walked out of prison. He had served between 12 and 14 years of a 100-year sentence. Larry Nash's family watched the man connected to their father's brutal murder return to freedom. Maria's family, if they're still alive, watched the man accused of ordering her execution rebuild his life. What did Mario do with his freedom? He didn't hide in shame or disappear into obscurity. He opened the Zoological Wildlife Foundation in Miami with his new wife, also named Maria. The exotic animal facility operates today, offering private tours where visitors can interact with tigers, leopards, cheetahs, and other big cats. Reviews are mostly positive, with guests praising the animal care and intimate experiences. Mario maintains a public Instagram account under the handle @MarioWildlife. He posts photos with animals, celebrities, and visitors. He's given interviews discussing his past, often framing himself as someone who paid his debt to society and deserves a second chance. When Tiger King made him famous again during the 2020 pandemic, Mario embraced the attention rather than shying from it. The documentary presents him as one of the more normal people in a cast of eccentric characters, an observation that says more about the company he keeps than about Mario himself. He casually discusses his criminal past, admits he sold drugs to maintain his animal habit, and acknowledges that some call him the prototype for Scarface's Tony Montana. That connection deserves examination. The 1983 film Scarface, directed by Brian De Palma and written by Oliver Stone, features Al Pacino as Cuban refugee Tony Montana, who builds a cocaine empire in Miami. While the film is officially a remake of a 1932 movie, the 80s version incorporated elements specifically from Miami's drug scene. Oliver Stone researched by obtaining access to FBI and DEA files from the early 1980s. He spent time in Miami, talking with both criminals and law enforcement. The chainsaw scene in Scarface, where a character is dismembered in a bathtub, mirrors the real murder of Larry Nash almost exactly, except in the movie, the victim escapes. Stone has confirmed in interviews that he based that scene on actual case files he reviewed. Mario's life parallels Tony Montana in striking ways. Both are Cuban, both built drug empires in Miami, both corrupted police, both collected exotic animals as status symbols, and both were eventually brought down by federal operations. Tony Montana dies in a hail of bullets defending his mansion. Mario Tabraue negotiated, informed, and walked free. Several of Mario's acquaintances and associates have stated they believe screenwriter Oliver Stone consulted with Mario or knew details of his operations. While Stone hasn't explicitly confirmed Mario as his sole inspiration, Tony Montana is an amalgamation of multiple criminals, including Al Capone and Pablo Escobar. The circumstantial evidence is compelling. Mario operated from a mansion in Coconut Grove with mirrored ceilings and a throne-like chair with his initials MT emblazoned on it, mirroring Tony Montana's TM throne in the film. In 1981, the FBI raided that very mansion looking for Mario, 2 years before Scarface was released. The timing suggests Stone would have been aware of Mario's operations while writing the screenplay. Mario drove a bulletproof Mercedes, brought suitcases of cash to banks, and lived with dangerous animals roaming his property. All details that appear in Scarface. Whether Mario directly inspired Tony Montana or simply represented the broader Miami drug culture that Stone depicted, one fact remains undeniable. The real story is more disturbing than the movie. Tony Montana loses everything: his sister, his wife, his empire, his life. There's a tragic arc, a fall from grace that feels like justice. Mario Tabraue lost nothing permanent. He served a fraction of his sentence, reopened his exotic animal business under a new name, married again, rebuilt his wealth, and now enjoys minor celebrity status. He hasn't publicly apologized to Larry Nash's family or Maria's family. He frames himself as someone who carries the stigma for crimes he claims others committed, despite witness testimony placing him at the scene of Larry's dismemberment. Prove you care about justice by subscribing, hitting the notification bell, and sharing this story. The algorithms bury content like this. Please help us fight back by engaging. The final twist in Mario's story is perhaps the most disturbing. He didn't just survive, he won. He walks free while Larry Nash's remains were destroyed. He runs a business while Maria's murder goes unavenged. He takes photos with tigers while the families of his victims live with permanent loss. He smiles for Instagram while the son of the man his organization butchered watches from afar, still looking for closure that will never come. Tony Montana's story ends with him standing alone, drugged up, firing at enemies until he's shot in the back and falls into his fountain. It's tragic, violent, and feels like karma. The tagline of Scarface is, "He loved the American dream, with a vengeance." Tony achieves wealth and power, yet loses his humanity and pays the ultimate price. Mario Tabraue's story has no such poetic ending. He loved the American dream and found a loophole. He committed atrocities, got caught, made deals, and returned to a version of the life he built on blood and coke. His throne still exists, just with different animals around it and better public relations. That's the uncomfortable truth about real crime versus movie crime. Real crime doesn't always end with justice. Real criminals sometimes become success stories. Real victims don't get closure, and their families don't get Hollywood endings. They get decades of pain while the perpetrators rebuild and rebrand. So when you see that Scarface poster, remember that this is the story they didn't tell you.
I want to thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you're going to love what's coming next. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for instant updates on our latest videos. See you in the next one.